Good afternoon. Welcome to this live broadcast of our meeting of the Minneapolis Charter Commission. My name is Peter Ginder, and I'm the chair of the Charter Commission. I will now call this meeting to order and ask the clerk to call the roll so that we may verify the presence of a quorum.
Commissioner Boone.
Present.
Clegg is absent. Commissioner Davis-Carter.
Present.
Commissioner DeMillo.
Present.
Commissioner Doherty.
Present.
Commissioner Garcia is absent. Commissioner Hawkins is absent. Commissioner Hill.
Present.
Commissioner Kozak.
Here.
Commissioner Mecki is absent. Commissioner Perry is absent. Commissioner Sandberg.
Present.
Commissioner Smith.
Here.
Vice Chair Wansley, or excuse me, Vice Chair Rubenstein,
Present.
and Chair Ginder.
Present.
We have 10 present.
Let the record reflect we have a quorum. We will now proceed to our agenda. Commissioners, we have an agenda for today's meeting before us, and could I please have a motion to adopt the agenda? In a second? Okay. We have a proper motion before us. Is there any discussion before the clerk calls the roll? Seeing none, clerk can call the roll.
Commissioner Boone.
Present.
You can.
No.
Aye. Aye.
Davis-Carter.
Aye.
DeMillo.
Aye.
Doherty.
Aye.
Hill.
Aye.
Kozak.
Aye.
Sandberg.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Rubenstein.
Aye.
Chair Ginder.
Aye.
We have 10 ayes.
That motion is adopted. The next item is if we can have a motion to accept the minutes from our previous meeting.
So moved, Rubenstein.
And is there a second?
Second, Kozak.
We have a proper motion before us. Is there any discussion before the clerk calls the roll? With that and seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. That motion passes and the minutes are accepted. Next on our agenda is the chair's report. First item on my report I've noted is we have a new commissioner. And if we could have Commissioner DeMello introduce herself, maybe give us just a short background in why she's interested in serving on the Charter Commission.
Oh, there we go. Thank you, Chair Ginder. My name is Miriam DeMello. I have a very interesting background with the city of Minneapolis. I currently am a part of Mayor Carter's administration in the city of St. Paul. And to sum it up, I love municipal government. I love the city of Minneapolis. I grew up here, born and raised. Hopefully I'll stay here for, the indefinite future. Hopefully to start a family here one day. And I love my city. I've traveled a lot. I've seen how different municipalities do things, and I strongly believe that this is the best city in America. So I'm really excited to be here. I have a legal background, graduated in Mitchell-Hamlin from 2018, and I've done so many different things since that time. So I'm really excited to be here.
Thank you, Commissioner DeMello, and welcome. The next item, as far as the chair's report, is you have, I think in front of you, I hope, a little memorandum prepared by the city clerk, Mr. Carl, showing the current terms of all of the commissioners and when those term ends. So I know that there are a number of terms ending this year. And Mr. Carl, did you want to speak to this a little bit?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to, for especially new members, but the public watching, you'll recall that early last year, Chief Judge Barnett took an action to restabilize or rebalance the appointments of seats through some processing errors over a number of years that had gone unchecked. It got to the point where 2/3 of this body's membership were all up for appointment or for reappointment and consideration last year. The statutes anticipate that no more than about half of the Charter Commission's membership will ever be up for appointment at one time to provide more stability in the body between terms. And so the Chief Judge took an action to provide an interim plan to adjust those terms. On the memo I've provided you, it shows on the left of the thicker line the adjusted terms, the start date and stop date of those in the interim period. Some of the seats were appointed to 2-year terms, others to 4-year terms to create that stagger that is anticipated under the statutes. And then the new term details that all begin in 2024 or in 2026, 2029. All of those are for 4 years and will continue thereafter for those 4-year periods. What that means is that there are 6 seats. Terms are assigned to seats, not to individuals. So as a primary example, Commissioner DeMello, who is recently appointed, is filling out the unexpired term associated with seat 1. Seats 1, 3, 5, 7, 11, and 15, a total of 6, are up to expire at the end of this year and would create new terms beginning January 1, 2024. I have listed those in the second chart on that memo for you and put in bold both the individual member who holds that seat and the term's expiration. On the back, you'll see information about the appointment process, which begins in September this year. Our open appointment process for the fall cycle will be September 15th, and it will close on Tuesday, October 31st. So we are using an online application through our Legislative Information Management System for the appointment process. Members of the public or members who currently serve and wish to be considered for reappointment can use that online application module and limbs to submit their application. I will note that although the city uses the open appointments process and has for many years, the Charter Commission, as you well know, is not a city board. This is not a municipal board that is created by and is subject to oversight by the mayor and the council. The Charter Commission is a board or a body created by state statute and is appointed by the district court through and by its chief judge. So it is much different than any of the other boards. However, the chief judge, in consultation and cooperation with my office, uses that open appointments process in order to solicit as wide a variety of applications as possible. So we do work very closely with the chief judge to promote awareness of that application period and that process. And when the application period closes in October, we will review all of the applications and make sure that they are eligible, meaning they need to be a resident of Minneapolis and a qualified voter. And we will forward those on to the chief judge for his consideration, and he takes that process from there. And then, as all of you know, we'll make those appointments. The appointments are made to those 4-year terms, so the new adjusted terms for those 6 seats begin January 1st of next year. Happy to respond to any questions, but at your request, Mr. Chair, wanted to put this in front of the body so that we could have an understanding of where we are with those.
Thank you, Mr. Carl. Are there any questions? I don't really have a question, but I think it's more of a comment. As I would note, it's my understanding that all of the commissioners whose term ends this year retain those seats or stay in that position until their successor is appointed, so that if somebody isn't appointed, as your term ends in December, you run over until a new person, if it's not you, is appointed to that position.
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Carl.
Yep.
Next item on the agenda today is a presentation regarding the government structure implementation and charter amendments. Mr. Carl?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hopefully you all have a memo dated today from me. Just undoing my charter book for reference if necessary. I know we came before this board at your last meeting, the regular meeting in June, and talked about the anticipation of a joint meeting between this body with the mayor and the city council to discuss the implementation of our new form of government, the executive mayor legislative council system that was approved at the 2021 municipal general election. I think I reported at that time, and you may recall that the council spent a majority of its time in 2022 last year working on implementation of that new form of government. And so that culminated in October last year with the adoption of what we referred to as the Government Structure Omnibus Ordinance. It was a very, very large ordinance which took the structure the voters approved per this body's amendment to the charter and detailed in the executive branch of government. It recreated 3 executive offices that report to the mayor and create the mayor's cabinet. It created a series of other administrative departments that make up the city's administration. It created and defined the legislative branch under the city council and other types of activities. There were at that time, however, obvious notes about some misalignment or lack of alignment between the charter and between that government structure ordinance. And so further amendments are needed to bring those 2 governing pieces together in alignment, to remove any conflicts between the charter and our code of ordinances. Also, to clarify some existing provisions within the charter that have created some issues for us over the years as we work with the charter after it was revised in the form of a plain language charter and became effective in 2015. And a number of other issues specifically tied to a myriad of special laws that over the life of the city have been enacted by the state legislature specific to the city of Minneapolis, and mostly around the creation of specific positions. So we're talking personnel actions where the state legislature has authorized us to have a position, to label it a certain title, and to provide for its duties. As a charter city operating under a home rule charter, it's not necessary for us to go ask the legislature for permission to create positions. We have that inherent authority to do. And so going forward, it's a matter of eliminating the special laws, and if there are provisions in the special laws that we need to or wish to retain, putting that either into the charter or the code of ordinances as appropriate. The chair had asked me to summarize for you at a high level the types of amendments that staff would bring forward. The city attorney's office is working on completing those. Our managing attorney, Susan Trammell, many of you know her, was the lead on the drafting of the government structure omnibus ordinance that was adopted by mayor and council in October, and she is taking the lead again on this work to bring closer alignment and clarity between the revised charter form of government and that government structure ordinance. So on this memo, you can see I've highlighted on the bottom part of the front page and carrying over to page 2, amendments that would be proposed in certain articles. And so I ended my brief introduction talking about special laws and the authority of a home rule charter city to create positions that it needs without special laws from the state legislature. I think we're looking for an elegant solution, if we can find one, that would allow us to amend Article 1 to provide that special laws heretofore enacted by the state legislature and accepted by the mayor and the council pursuant to statute that are no longer needed by the city are then rescinded or repealed as appropriate, and those that are required to be retained or which we choose to retain would be enacted via other ways, either by the charter or code. So not quite sure what that will look like when it's fully drafted, but that's, I think, the extent of any amendments in Article 1, really dealing with expanding and clarifying our home rule authority, and that we don't need to retain special laws that have been in place over the life of the history, creating specific positions. I can pause and see if there are questions on this specific piece.
Commissioner Kozak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Carl, is it fair to say that these are, well, they don't appear, I know you'll have to wait till the final draft, but from what I can see there, these are non-controversial, so they're more technical than really substantive, like other things we've seen?
Through the chair to Commissioner Kozak's question, I would call them technical clarifications. I would also say they're pretty inside baseball, if I can use that term. It's about knowing how the organization is structured and how responsibilities flow from elected officials through departments and carry out duties of the municipal government. And so, although any amendment made by ordinance is certainly subject to a petition, and if that petition is found to be sufficient, would have to be referred to voters in the primary pathway. I think our preference at this point, as I noted in the memo, is that we would attempt to bring this forward through ordinance. So what's allowed under subdivision 7 of 41012, which is the statutory provision on how charters are amended, we'd seek to do it by ordinance first, just because there are a numerous number of amendments to be made over multiple articles in the charter, and we think that with the approval of this body, which is required, and the unanimous vote of council and approval of mayor, we could make those easier.
Thank you.
Commissioner Rubenstein.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Carl, if the city council decides that they don't want to approve all of them unanimously, presumably they can be severed so that certain ones could go to the voters if needed, and others might just be passed as ordinance.
Through the chair again to Commissioner Rubenstein's question, that would be our hope, is that the drafting would be such that they aren't necessarily dependent on them. Some of them could be a little bit dependent, and we'd have to make judgment calls at that point, especially, and I'll get to this later, Article 8, which is the most extensively, I think, referred to internally by staff in our day-to-day operations, and creates the most problems for us, and just in terms of operations. And because that's where I would expect a lot of attention, it sort of has strings into other articles. And so it would be difficult in some areas, I think, to wholly sever them, and in others, like this one in Article 1, it shouldn't be.
Thank you.
And I would note for commissioners as well as the public at large, there are literally hundreds of these special laws governing the city, many of which really should be in either ordinance or just left up to the discretion of, for example, in personnel field, to the appointing agency, appointing agent. So, and many of them are purely outdated. That went into effect, decades ago, that really don't have any impact anymore, or are actually probably not in step with what current law would be or current thinking would be on particular issues. So it's been an ongoing problem for a number of years that the city has created itself by continually going to the legislature for things that it could have done itself. Commissioner Kozak.
Well, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Carl, just one quick question. I assume if the council, you couldn't get 13 votes, we'd have to wait until the 24 election to bring this to the ballot, right?
Commissioner Kozak, that's correct. It is too late to submit a question to the ballot this year.
Yeah, that's what I assume. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, with your approval, I'll go on to the next one.
Please.
So after Article 1, there is, you may recall I mentioned this at the meeting in June, there's a small, I would call it a Scrivener error, so highly technical. As we went about creating the government structure proposal, this body created or elevated and recreated the Office of City Auditor. We had an internal auditor, as you know. That office was elevated to a city auditor position, and it was codified for the first time in the charter. It was a point of much discussion by this body that the auditor would need to be protected. It was subject to appointment by an independent audit committee. The audit committee itself is established and appointed by the council. The auditor serves in a variety of capacities. I'll largely classify them in two groups. One, they do the internal auditing of the city, so programmatic auditing and financial auditing, things like that. That's the traditional function of the auditor that was reserved and preserved through that government structure. The other function, which is new, is providing what I call professional service support for the council, serving as their professional arm for research, for policy analysis, for oversight support, as it now functions in a legislative capacity. And so as it's building up over this last year and even into this year, that new function of oversight and policy review and analysis, there was a need to provide some protection so that an auditor was not removed for falling out of political favor. And you may recall that we put into the charter a provision that said how the auditor could be removed. And unfortunately, I think it's an oversight. There is what appears to be, in my opinion, a Scrivener's error. It says that the auditor can only be removed by the council pursuant to section 8.2G3 for cause by a majority vote. By a majority vote. Those last words are the problem. Because under section 8.2G3 that it points to within the charter, that says removal is a 2/3 vote. Clearly, this body, I think, by referencing that point, said removal should be 2/3, not a simple majority. And so this would need to be clarified, or else there is a conflict between the section it references and the concluding words of the section that deals with the auditor's removal. So I think that one is clearly a very technical correction and could easily be made by ordinance. Again, assuming that the this body concurs, you were the author of the ordinance, so should know, and then the unanimous approval of the council and the mayor concurring. That's the only change within Article 4 that we have identified at this point. The major substantive changes that staff would like to bring forward deal with Article 8. And as I alluded to, this is one of the articles we deal with the most in the charter in our day-to-day work. This article deals with, it's titled Officers and Other Employees. It really deals with elected officials, appointed officials and officers of the city as a municipal corporation, employees that serve within the classified system, employees that serve in the unclassified system, and it also establishes and provides much detail for the Minneapolis Civil Service Commission, which exercises a policy oversight of our appointed or classified system of employees. In the process of moving from the original charter to the plain language charter to today's amended over many years since the plain language charter was done, this section has become very muddied. And so there are multiple references to how appointed officials, elected officials, employees are removed, suspended, disciplined, appointed, who appoints them. There are some internal conflicts within the document in terms of terms and when terms begin or don't begin, if there's a late vacancy or an early vacancy. And then, of course, we're referencing elections and late vacancies and early vacancies under the article for council, under the article for mayor, under the article for the Board of Estimate Taxation, under the article for the park board. But then here again, we've repeated those articles, but sometimes they're not exactly the same. And so for us, Article 8 is one that has to be, and the lawyers among you will appreciate this perhaps more than I, it has to be read in total, it has to be referred to the other articles, and then there has to be a consultation to go, what do we think this really means in this specific instance? And then try and be consistent from there going forward. And so we actually have a guide to how appointments are made, how removals are done, that tries to explain this charter, the code of ordinances, and then city policies that all are affected and emanate from this article. So our proposal is that this is our chance to clarify all of this, basically through a complete rewrite of Article 8, that you would have a section dealing with elected officials and everything dealing with elected officials. You'd have an article dealing with executive officers and everything having to do with executive officers, their appointment, their terms, when they're aligned, how they begin, how you define a vacancy, and how they can be removed. The same thing then for other officials, and then a section on employees, classified service, unclassified service, and then the Civil Service Commission. Also, as we're talking about the charter and its constitutional relationship to the city, there is a significant volume of detail about the Civil Service Commission that is not provided for any of the other boards that are created in the charter. For example, the Civil Rights Commission and the Planning Commission. They are created, they're given a purpose, and they talk about their functions. With the Civil Service Commission, we've codified the rules of the Civil Service Commission into the charter. So there's, in our opinion, too much operational detail for the Civil Service Commission in the charter that could be reserved to the Civil Service Commission's rules or to codes, which are easier then for us to change as needs change over the years. And so that is a high-level summary of the most changes that staff would recommend through amendments for the purpose of clarifying one of the articles of the charter we look to the most. And I've provided a little bit of that detail on the memo for you. And again, to align also with the government structure ordinance that council did adopt. You can see at the bottom breaking up between elected officials and local appointed officials. Local appointed officials is a term that is used in state statutes and state regulations. So it's a broader term for us, and we would encompass under that the executive officers that we defined in the government structure ordinance. That includes the 3 executives that are appointed by and report directly to the mayor, which includes the city attorney, the city operations officer, the community safety commissioner. It would then identify the administrative officers defined in our code now with the mayor and council's action to be the heads of all of our operating departments, and then there's a catch-all other category. This is for those officers that are officers of the corporation, the city as a government organization, but not officers in the administration under the mayor. That would include the city clerk, the city auditor, and the officers of the Park and Recreation Board. So their superintendent, attorney, and secretary, and also the secretary for the Board of Estimate and Taxation. I think that summarizes all of the proposed amendments that staff has identified at this point. Again, a lot more detail when the attorneys have fleshed that out for you. But this is the scope and magnitude of those, and as was sort of alluded to earlier, I think the vast majority of these are technical. They're highly complex and deal with how the city operates. Assuming that there is concurrence by this body and the city council, we would look to start finalizing the drafting of those ordinances, or the ordinance as the case may be, to bring that forward early next year.
Are there any questions for Mr. Carl? Any other discussion? I do have a couple of comments on this. For those that have been on the commission for a while, if you remember back in 2015 when we did the plain language charter, which we took our charter, which was basically a compilation of special laws, so that 120-page document, which was full of archaic language, which was this compilation going back to the 1800s of special laws governing the city, that in and of itself made it difficult, for example, in this personnel area that Mr. Carl's talked about, how to put this all together from what was in the charter as well as all the other existing special laws that the legislature had passed for the city. When we passed the plain language charter in 2015, that simplified the language. It didn't necessarily clarify the language. So when we got through the 2015 language, staff in the city still struggled with the meaning of the language as particular examples came up. So even though we only had a paragraph instead of pages, we still struggled. What does a vacancy mean? When does a term end? All those kind of issues. So much of what Mr. Carl talked about in Section 8 would be, in my mind, a welcome rewrite of that for not only staff, but for residents of the city to maybe better understand how these appointments are made, especially in the area of department head level or higher, or even with the elected officials. One other way to break out this Section 8, though, is the new government structure that went into effect by ordinance. That is the big substantive change that is in here, which was one of the choices made by the citizen work groups back in 2021. They came forward to Mayor Fry with, here's some possibilities of running this new executive mayor legislative council charter, and the mayor chose this system, which has been implemented now. So it's time to take a look at this, is do we now want to embed this new structure in charter? So that is the big substantive question that will be in front of us as well as the council on how does this system really look now? We've had a year's experience with it. Is this the model that we're going to go forward with? Because it has been the major change and would be, the major change baked into our charter if we move forward with this and it's approved by the voters, or if, for example, the council wanted to do it on a unanimous vote. So that's another way of thinking what Mr. Carl has talked about, but that will be the big issue for us as we move forward. So Are there other questions or discussion?
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to add to your comment about the rewrite of the charter back, 8 years ago. I and some other people were there during that process. And the very clear intention and focus at that time was to preserve the substantive provisions in the charter and just reorganizing it so that it made sense. And that was a good idea at the time, but I'm glad that that decision has come back to haunt us. So having these new proposed revisions will be a good thing. So thank you for that.
Seeing no other discussion, I'll ask the clerk to file that report. And thank you very much, Mr. Carl. I appreciate your taking the time to do this presentation for the commission.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I forgot to mention, I think I did. Staff is working based on the largest availability between members of this body and council to set that joint meeting either late September or early October. As you might imagine, it's hard to get calendars aligned between 15 members on the Charter Commission, 13 city council members, and 1 mayor. And so to the extent that we can get a majority of the 2 bodies together, it would be our hope to do that as soon as possible. You also are aware, in fulfillment of his charter responsibility, the mayor only recently proposed the supplemental 2024 budget for the council. So council is now in the midst of taking up its consideration of the mayor's 2024 budget proposal, and they're up for election, just the 13 council members, as you know, in less than 80 days. And so the council's calendar is quite full. But to the extent that we can find a date that's good for a majority of them and for you, we would like to secure that right away. So I'm working with Michael, who is your clerk, to find a date that will work with the majority of you. Hopefully sometime end of September, early October, we can get that scheduled. Thanks.
Thank you. Finally, we have the receipt of public comments that are offered at the end of each of our meetings. Is there anyone here to speak? Anyone to speak for the Charter Commission meeting? Seeing no one, we've concluded all the business that comes before the Charter Commission, and without any objection, we'll stand adjourned. Thank you.